this video explaining my family tension is going to be a long 10 plus minute unedited video, one straight shot for YouTube. I told you I would continue on. So my mom and my grandma came to my house on Tuesday. It's Saturday. A lot of the tension arguing was caught on camera on my live streams, and it brought a little insight into our family dynamic. But I want to talk about what led up to all that tension. So on Tuesday, my mom and my grandma arrived, and my mom blames my grandma for misplacing my mom's sandwich. My mom has BPD and OCD. So when her sandwich went missing, it wasn't a simple fix, oh, I'll make you a new sandwich. She wanted the sandwich she made, and that's just part of her OCD. And so she spent hours looking for the sandwich. They had so many bags that they had brought that eventually, by the time she found her sandwich, she was so sick that she went to bed. They were cooking that night as well, but something about the sandwich made her really sick. So she was coping through her OCD. She helped make shrimp linguine that night, but she ended up going to sleep at 8 o'clock, and she didn't wake up until 3 p.m. the next day, which would have been Wednesday. Wednesday is the day I took my grandma out to show her around the city. I took her out for food. I took her to my favorite grocery store. I took her to a nice restaurant. And then when we got home, by that time, my mom was still sleeping. I cleaned up the house. The kids got home from school, and weeknights are chaotic. So we were doing dinner, all that stuff, and we went to bed early. So when my mom and grandma went to bed, I guess, they were sharing my room where there's a pull-out couch and a king-size bed. At some point, my grandma talked to my mom about packing some things in the truck so they have less to pack on Friday when they leave. And this triggered my mom. My mom struggles with fear of abandonment and like stress. She has a lot of stressors, and my grandma is a huge trigger for my mom. And I guess on Wednesday night, this put my mom into it ruined her trip. She wanted the trip to go one way, and she's getting stressed at the thought of already packing on her second day here. Also, my mom paid a cat sitter, house sitter until Monday. So it was also conflicting with her plans. It wasn't conflicting with my plans. They can stay as long as they want. They can leave as early as they want. My doors are open and they can close. I'm not kicking them out. I'm not asking them to leave early. If they want to stay longer, they can stay longer. So on Thursday, my son's birthday, there was some tension between my mom and grandma while they were baking in the kitchen. This was my son's birthday. I was focused on making as much money as possible because I had a lot to spend on my son for his birthday. And so I was live streaming that day, and I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on between my mom and my grandma in the kitchen. They were in the kitchen baking. By the time it was after school, I wanted to take my son to a guitar place where he could look through all the stuff he wants. He wanted a new setup. So we were out for at least 2 hours. And when we got home, it was a huge mess. And my son, all of us, we couldn't eat in that mess. They had made soup, some sweet potato things, stuffed sweet potatoes, and they made 4 birthday cakes. And so they didn't clean up as they went along, and I snapped. I totally snapped because they had this tension going on. My mom got sick her first day there. I was trying to remedy everything, and I snapped, and I asked them to please go to a seafood broil. So I spent $80 on an Uber trip for my kids and my grandma and my mom to go to a seafood broil. And while they were at the seafood broil, I wiped the whole kitchen spotless. It took me 2 hours. It was that messy. I had to do all of these dishes, clean everything. There was tomato sauce splattered everywhere. It was crazy. And frosting was everywhere. It looked like a culinary arts classroom. So by the time, though, that they got back from the seafood broil, the cake was all prepared. It was beautiful. I had a nice setup. My son blew out his candles, but they were too full to eat cake because I guess they had a lot of seafood at the restaurant. So my mom was awesome, and she paid the bill. It was over $100. And I got the Ubers for them because they can't drive in the city of Pittsburgh. It's too complicated, which is why I had them do the Uber. And I felt really bad for yelling at them that night. I apologized to my mom and my grandma. I said, I understand if you can't forgive me. I'm very sorry. My stress is at its peak. I have a lot going on. It's very stressful and I overreacted and I'm very sorry. And they forgave me. And then Friday goes down. And that's the day my grandma thought that it was time to go. And my mom thought that they were staying until Sunday. So they're having tension. I'm in my living room live streaming, trying to save back all of the money I spent on Thursday. And they split up. My mom was in the kitchen with my daughter. I thought my grandma had gone upstairs. I go in the kitchen and just to like prevent an enormous mess from happening, like that had happened on Thursday, I say, nope, I'm going to just ask you to just remove yourself from the kitchen and I'm going to clean it all off. Because there were dirty dishes and utensils and stuff, and I just couldn't handle a huge mess, and I like to clean as I go along. And when my mom went upstairs and my daughter like went in the other room, I thought my grandma was upstairs, and I'm venting to my chat on my live stream about messes and how stressed out I get, which led into an argument because I didn't know my grandma was on the balcony listening, eavesdropping. Had my grandma been eavesdropping, I wouldn't have been like venting. Like, I didn't know my grandma was eavesdropping. And so she pops up behind me and starts yelling at me. And I tried to stay calm. And I just explained, these are my rules. I need the kitchen to stay clean. It just needs to be this way. I was being very rude. Like, if you were watching me, you would think I'm being very rude. And I started to learn, like, after reflecting, it's not okay to meet disrespect with disrespect. I was being disrespectful. And even though I felt disrespected, I guess I could have like communicated more effectively so that I wasn't, you know, being defensive and then she gets defensive. And for that display of disrespectful behavior, I'm sorry. Whether or not she says she's sorry, I forgive her. Because it was kind of, you know, rude to eavesdrop, and it's also rude to make a huge mess. But it's not the end of the world. So everything got calmed down. And the kids had a half day of school, and my mom and my grandma are having this tension because my grandma wanted to leave that day, but my mom wanted to stay. And then my son had plans with his friends because they had a half day of school. So he went out with his friends, and my mom and my daughter and my grandma were like all in the same area. And my grandma and my daughter were going to go out, and my mom wanted to go. And my grandma said, no, it's just going to be me and her. And so my mom got really upset. Like, she has BPD, and this doesn't make anyone more or less of a person. However, it's that triggering feeling of abandonment that can really hurt someone's feelings. And you have to be very responsible when you trigger someone, not to trigger someone. If you know that someone has triggers of feelings of abandonment, you know, it's just kind of reckless to do that. Like, if you're on a family vacation and you tell someone with BPD they're not included, it's really cruel. So that triggered my mom. At some point, I take a nap. And this is where TikTok is up in flames about me. I took a nap, and I woke up to the sound of cards being shuffled, a deck of cards. And I wake up to arguing. And I hear my mom arguing with my grandma because my grandma wanted to leave and my mom didn't want to leave. And like they're arguing really bad, and I hit my live stream button and I started to live stream because I wanted, first of all, I was scared. Second of all, I wanted everyone to like hear what had been experiencing since Wednesday night, or what they had been arguing about since Wednesday night. And I'm confused. And for those of you who don't understand, you don't have to. Just take it for what it is. I have a huge community who helped me sort out my confusions, and if it weren't for my community talking with me last night, I wouldn't have been able to reflect so deeply and come to these conclusions. So hear me out. As I'm live streaming for a few minutes, a lot of people are saying, no, you need to shut this off. It's just not right if they don't know that you're live streaming. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to shut my live stream off and just live stream later. And so later on, I start live streaming, and that was downtime. Like, after they mended their argument, they never played cards because my mom was arguing with my grandma and about leaving early, and they decided to just all disperse. Around 8:30, my daughter went upstairs to go to bed. My grandma's sitting on the chair playing a game. My mom's watching a soap opera. And I decided to start live streaming and battling on TikTok around 9:30. So at 9:30 p.m. I start battling. And my son was out with friends and he was heading home very soon. Like, he got home around like literally like 9:40, like 10 minutes after my live stream started. And that was when my mom got really triggered and said, you shouldn't have your son go out with friends if you know it's our last day here. Well, excuse me, I thought that your last day here was going to be Monday or Sunday, and I'm not going to have my son cancel his plans with friends because he truly went through a lot over the last year, and he deserves to go out with friends. He deserves a social life, and I'm really happy that he has one, and I would never interrupt his life with his friends. So my mom starts arguing with me about this, and that was like at the peak. My grandma ends up going to bed. At some point, my mom and I start arguing back and forth. And that is when, like, I just decided to go to my car and separate. And she went up to bed. And that was when I went back into my house and reflected on everything. And when I reflected on everything, I came to the conclusion that the argument between me and my mom on TikTok Live was both of us misplacing our anger, or I don't really think I had anger misplaced. I think that my mom was misplacing her anger. I think that she was frustrated with my grandma and she was lashing out, and I was coming off as abrasive. I was just really, really, truly trying to piece together all of her pain behind her voice, and I was also trying to defend my stance on parenting. And so as I reflected, I learned my mom has spent so much time visiting at my house without my grandma there. And she never, ever acted this way. She never made a mess. My grandma, I don't know. I don't think she ever made a mess either. There was never like a huge mess. There was never arguing. There was never name calling or just rude, lashing out behavior. When she came to visit, it was always like really fun and calm and cool, and she would live stream with me and participate in my battles, and it was always like a blast. And even though my son didn't go out with his friends when she visited last time, I guarantee if he would have, she would have still enjoyed her time. I think that what happened was my mom and my grandma have some deep-seated trauma or tension, conflict that is unresolved. I'm not sure what that is. But I think that when they're together, they trigger each other. And that my mom especially is triggered by my grandma. And I'm not placing the blame of my actions on my grandma. I just want you all to know that I am going to take accountability of the fact that I was very abrasive last night. And I also have so many stressors. But that's never an excuse to match someone else's lashing out with lashing out. And I wouldn't say I was lashing out. I was like more so defensive than lashing out. And I learned in a situation like that, when there's two family members who have tension with each other that are just building up more and more angst, there's no mending it. No, you could talk and try to get to the bottom of it and try to fix it. But if they don't want to heal their relationship, no one else can. And so I've learned that to prevent this from ever happening again, that if they come visit, they can't come together. Either my grandma can come or my mom can come. And that's where it ends. Because my mom has been treated unfairly while she's been here. My grandma has also been kind of like triggering my mom into having episodes and almost like preying on her BPD. I hate to say it, and I don't know if my grandma's aware of it, but my grandma knows what my mom's triggers are, and I don't know if my grandma's like conscious of triggering my grandma. And then my mom is just a constant defense, power struggle the whole time. And so it's really sad that I was like trying to throw myself in the middle and make sense of it all. So fast forward, it's Saturday morning, they're here, and they're already arguing when they wake up. One doesn't want to leave, one wants to leave. So I try to like remedy this from this angle, okay? We didn't get to do a lot of stuff on weekdays because that was when the kids had school, but it's the weekend. So we can go to the science museum, the aviary, the Andy Warhol Museum. There's a lot of indoor activities that are best for like early morning, like 10 a.m., 11 a.m. And my mom's like, yeah, let's go. And my grandma says, no, you can't go because you're going to get sick. And she's kind of like throwing my mom's mental illness in her face. She said, if you go out, you get sick and then you won't be able to drive. And so she just like, it's just not being very kind to my mom. It's obviously 10 a.m. at the time. It was 10 a.m. My mom could have totally gone to a museum for a couple hours. I offered to get an Uber there for parking, to avoid a parking fee and stuff. My mom wouldn't have gotten sick. And so then that, like, my grandma's attitude kind of influenced my kids to say they don't want to go. To, like, they're kind of, like, siding with my mom. And I see what's happening now. Like, my grandma has now gotten my kids to gang up on my mom. And that's not fair. So I asked my mom, do you want to go just me and you one-on-one? And my mom says no. So my grandma turned down the offer to go to the museum, the aviary, and the art museum. So the science museum, art museum, and the aviary. My mom turned down the idea. And so then my mom said if we didn't have to leave today and if my mom would let me, I would go. I said, well, how about I just get grandma an Uber home? And my grandma said no. So my mom is really like upset and I feel for her. I wish I could show her around the city because I got to show my grandma around one day, but, and instead of like continuing to interject like I did last night and the day before, to the point where it just everyone's emotions escalate and you start acting abrasive, I'm taking accountability for that and learning. I did what I could. I depleted my options. I tried, and I'm gonna dismiss myself from it so that I don't escalate my behavior into being abrasive, and that I could just sit in my car while those two work it out. And that's all I can do because it's their relationship that needs mending and I'm not the healer of their relationship. So I really hope everyone who's watching this can hear me out. It's very complicated, especially for me when it's all happening at once. And I don't want to disrespect my grandma. I love my grandma. I don't want to disrespect my mom. I love my mom. And it wasn't like the mess that had me at that peak of stress. It was their arguing back and forth and their constant conflict that was leading up to the mess where I kind of just like snapped and wanted to prevent a mess. And it's interesting. The mess is like symbolic of their relationship because my mom was never messy at my house and neither was my grandma. But their first night of like arguing, Wednesday, there was a huge mess. They're arguing Thursday, huge mess. And so it's like, it's kind of like a symbol of, I don't know how to phrase this, that they have a lot of healing to do. That's all I'm going to say. And I just can't handle it. So if I can do anything to help, it would be to interject to prevent the mess from happening and ground myself and clean. But I don't really know how to fix things between my mom and my grandma. And it's looking like they're going to be leaving today because my grandma is not wanting to stay. She's wanted to leave like since Wednesday. I'm not really sure why. So yeah, it's really stressful and I feel bad. And a lot of you are like, oh, you shouldn't post this on social media. You shouldn't live stream if your family's arguing. And I disagree because this is going to be relatable to at least like 60% of people. I also said that when I went into social media that I would not participate in what's called FOMO, the fear of missing out. It's a diagnosis, not really. It's like a situation. The fear of missing out. It's a state of mind where people only post the happy, peachy keen parts of their life and they don't post any difficulties, flaws. They don't post any imperfections. And that makes people think that everyone's life is perfect and they must be doing something wrong. And it leads to a lot of depression, feelings of inadequacy. It makes people feel left out. And so like as an influencer, I would be reckless to only share the perfect peachy keen moments and not share moments like this that other people can learn from. Not only learn that this is common, it's not healthy, but it's common. And also model that you can reflect and try to learn from family conflicts and that you can try your best to learn from it kind of like how I learned by just like kind of stepping away. And sometimes, like, if you try to put yourself in a situation where you think you can heal someone and you can't, it just gets more and more frustrating, and you snap and you come off very abrasive the way I did yesterday. And for that, I'm sorry. And I even apologized to my family, and they forgive me. But that's because they know that it's my mom versus my grandma. Adrielle throws herself in the middle and kind of lashes out. Not lashes out, but like gets kind of like acts disrespectful. But at the end of the day, it's those two going at it. And I feel bad. I really do. And it sucks. So hopefully we get to go somewhere today and make the most of it. But the minute I bring anything up, they instantly shut me down. My grandma instantly just shuts me down. Nope. And the minute I say, okay, me and my mom are going to go, she's making decisions on my mom's behalf. So I feel bad for my mom, and I don't know what else to say, but if you have any questions, comment below.